The wellness report is automatically displayed after running a balanced biosurvey. This report focuses on the 4 core body systems and 6 supporting lifestyle areas that are critical for maintaining overall wellness. The first page of this report shows what we call the dynamic profile. At the top, you can see how many biomarkers were scanned overall. Now, as a reminder from previous videos, biomarkers are also sometimes referred to as stressors, and they include things like body systems, organs, vertebrae, environmental toxins, and emotions. And again, biomarkers, as well as products and services in the ZYTO software, are digital representations of the actual items. And so we refer to them as virtual items. Below the biomarkers scanned line, you'll see the range number. This number is determined by measuring the body's responses to 35 neutral virtual items. The average of the body's responses to these items is calculated at the beginning of each biosurvey. The range is basically the body's baseline or normal response level. Any biomarker virtual items that are scanned will either fall within this range or outside of the range. Biomarkers that are within the range may be thought of as something the body can handle on its own, while the biomarkers that are out of range are the things that are unusual responses that the body may need some kind of support for. Now, range number fluctuates based on the individual. There's no ideal range number, so don't worry if this number seems large or small. That being said, some people find that they have a higher range number than they normally do when they're under more stress. So, if a person's range is consistently around 5 to 10 when they do a ZYTO scan, but it was 25 or 30 this time, that could be an indicator that your body is dealing with more stress than usual. Okay, below the range, we can see the number of biomarkers that were in range, followed by the number that were out of range. To the right, you can see this displayed graphically where the green dots are the in-range biomarkers and the red dots are the out-of-range biomarkers. Like the range value, the number of in-range and out-of-range biomarkers is not an indicator of overall health or wellness. Instead, it's more of an indicator of the body's ability to deal with the biomarkers scanned at that particular point in time. So, if your client looks at where they have 118 biomarkers out of range, they might think, wow, I have a lot of health problems. But this isn't necessarily the case. You should instead think of the out-of-range biomarkers as the body's energetic priorities. Some people may have more biomarkers to prioritize than others, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they're less healthy than someone with fewer biomarkers out of range. So it's important to not get discouraged or think about what's wrong, and we can pass this message on when we're scanning clients as well. Basically, this isn't intended to be a doom and gloom thing. Instead, it's an opportunity to ask questions about things that are showing up and being positive and saying things like, okay, this is great. We know that you may be struggling with this, but here's what we can do for it. Okay, moving on with this report. The next page shows which products brought the out-of-range biomarkers back into range. So the top product virtual item here brought the most biomarkers into range, and each product below progressively brought more of those out-of-range biomarkers back into range until this last product here brings the remaining biomarkers into range. You'll notice that there are letters in front of each product. This tells us which product line it is. So in this case, it's ZUB, which stands for ZYTO Universal Balanced Products. These are just generic products that can be used with any type of branded or homemade product that you have. So that's what we've selected for this demonstration. Now, along with showing you how many biomarkers each product brought into range, the report also gives you a detailed description of each product. And as you're looking at these, you might find some similar ingredients or uses for multiple products. Looking at similarities may give you a better idea of what may be going on with that person in terms of their overall wellness. Now, along with the descriptions, you'll also see which category each product was in. These are all under the All ZUB Balancers category. But if we added any of these to our inventory, it would also say Inventory right next to that. So that's how you can easily tell which items you have in stock and which ones you would need to order for the client. Another thing to note here is that, like the biomarkers, each product is given a score, which we call a deviation ratio, or DR for short. You can see that the top product here has the highest DR at 29.63, and then the following ones have lower numbers. When it comes to balancers such as products and services, a higher DR value indicates that the body had a greater coherent response to that virtual item. This can be thought of as being similar to a muscle test. In a muscle test, the practitioner may have you hold a bottle of supplements in one hand while testing your free hand and arm for weakness or strength. If the arm is weak when tested, the body is basically saying no to that supplement. But if it stays strong, then the body is saying yes, I prefer that supplement. This is a similar concept with a ZYTO scan. However, we get even more information with a ZYTO scan because we can also see the degree of the response by looking at this DR number. This is different than when looking at biomarkers. As we mentioned, with biomarkers, we're prioritizing ones that are out of range, whether it's a positive or negative number. But with balancers, the ones with the highest positive values are the ones we want to prioritize. Moving down past the top products, the next section of the wellness report is the systems and lifestyle areas overview. The biomarkers in the Balanced Bio Survey are categorized into 4 core systems and 6 supporting lifestyle areas, and the responses to each category as a whole are presented here. Now, these systems and lifestyle areas were chosen because they have a profound influence on overall health and wellness. Now, down here, we can see the responses to the 4 core systems, and any bar that extends to the right of this red vertical range line is out of range. So, detoxification is out of range, and the hormonal endocrine system is slightly out of range. Those are the areas you can prioritize and look into further. And then, same thing on the 6 lifestyle areas. You can see that inflammation is the most out of range, followed by hydration and toxic stress. Further down on the report, we have a detailed breakdown of each of the 4 core body systems and lifestyle areas. Let's go to detoxification, since that was the most out of range. We can see everything that was out of range within that system. Water contaminants at the top, lymphatic and electromagnetic, and then down to parasites at the bottom. Now, to illustrate what I was just explaining, you can see that we have negative and positive numbers here. But when seeing what's out of range, we're basically just ignoring those negative signs and saying, is the absolute value of that number greater than the range of 5.63? In other words, everything between 5.63 and negative 5.63 is in range, and everything greater than 5.63 or less than 5.63 is out of range. Okay, another thing here is that if there are any 0 DR items, those would show up at the bottom below all these out of range stressors. 0 DRs are basically just a non-response. So we asked the body a question, and the answer was the same as the original baseline response. It's like we said, how do you feel about this? And the body kind of said, I'm not really sure. I don't have an opinion. Now, technically, a 0 is categorized as in range and is nothing to be concerned about. But we do include them in the report in case anyone is curious about which items showed up as zeros. Below the out of range and 0 DR items, we have the top balancers for that specific system. So this allows you to really focus in and say, okay, how do these products relate to these out of range biomarkers? And then, how do the top products for other systems relate? Which ones are showing up over and over again? And that information can help you make those connections and ask more relevant questions. Okay, a good thing you can do is to focus in more to take those top 3 or 4 systems and lifestyle areas that are out of range and see how those relate to each other. So, detoxification and inflammation definitely have a close relationship, as well as hydration. Lack of hydration can cause inflammation, and then toxic stress relates to detoxification and could have an impact on inflammation as well. Now, when looking at out-of-range items, it's important to remember that there could be a different reason for a response. Again, this report isn't diagnosing anything. The truth is that something could show up as out of range for several reasons. It could, in fact, be a physical issue in the terrain of the body. But it may be an energetic issue, or an emotional issue, or another related part of the body that's vectored to that item, which we discuss in the vectoring video and in the other balance reports video. We also have an article that explains the questions to ask to help you determine the reason for an out-of-range response. That will be linked in the description, so make sure to read that to learn more along with watching those videos. Okay, moving on with the report, the last section here is services. These are the top 5 preferred services when we ran the scan. Again, a good thing is to see how these relate to each other, and then making the larger connection, how do these relate to the out-of-range biomarkers? What are the similarities? And what about the products? Are there similarities between what those are used for and these services? It's all about making those connections. And this report is great for helping you do that so you can then get a better understanding of the person's overall wellness. Once you've gone through the report, it's always a good idea to give the session a name that describes it so you can easily refer to it later. Just come up here and click Name Session. And for this one, we might say something like Detox and Inflammation, or maybe the top products, Shepherd's Purse and Willow Bark. Basically, you're just identifying a theme for that report so you can easily know at a glance what that report was about. Again, one of the great things about the ZYTO reports is that they help you ask more relevant questions about the person's wellness, not only to yourself, but also by having a dialogue with the client and saying things like, okay, this showed up as out of range. Has that been an issue for you at all? And you'll be surprised about how many times a client comes back and says, I never really thought about that, but yeah, that has been an issue for me, and I can see why it showed up. Okay, one last note here is you can see that you also have the option to email or print the report using these icons at the top. We've made that process very easy so you can send the report to your client or print with the click of a button. Alrighty, that covers the Balance Wellness Report. Make sure to watch the next video that goes through the other reports in the Balance, as well as the vectoring video, and then the reasons for out-of-range response article, which is linked in the description.